Hi guys, we're back with another lecture. We are live, so I'm just gonna wait for everybody to join in. Okay, those people who are joining in, let me know if you can hear me okay. Can everyone who's joining hear me okay? Hello? Just give me a thumbs up if you can hear me. Okay. All right, so we're getting uh, people to join in. That's great. Welcome, guys. Let's see who's here. Mohammed Sameem, Shahid, Sameem is there, Hasib, Sonia Khan. Who's that? Hello there. Um, Harun Mirza, Muhammad Asadullah, Samra is here. Sadiq Hussain, Shariar, Wakas Ahmed, Shahid Ali, Irshad Gopeng. Who's that? Tariq Khan, Mohammed Sadrehan. Good to see everyone coming in and joining. After this class, what we're going to do is on your virtual learning environment, we're going to be posting an assignment for everyone, which will be based on the two lectures we had. This one, which is on social class, and the last one, which is on subculture. So we're going to be doing that. Also, after this class, I'm going to create a Skype video call uh, to see how that goes. To have a um, session with those people who are here, any questions and answers. And I tried it. Um, I tried it the other day, um, and it was okay in terms of the video quality and everything. So we could see a lot of people, and we had that interactive session that took place with a different group that I was working with. So we will do that right after this session. I will share the link with you guys for that live session after we're done with the social classes. Oh, thanks for the message, Irshad. I don't know. For me, even though we're doing this sitting at home, um, it's like, I feel better when I'm dressed more appropriately. I've seen people nowadays who are sitting in shorts and t-shirts, and they're working from home. But I don't know, psychologically, I don't feel like I'm working if I'm sitting in my t-shirt or pajamas or something of that sort. So for me, it's like I think it's more important for me to be dressed appropriately. uh, I even put on perfume. Obviously nobody can smell that, I can smell that. So I put on the perfume because it makes me feel good about myself. So yeah, I don't know. What about you guys? How's everybody? What sort of dress are you guys in? How many people stay in PJs right now? Okay, interesting uh, answers we're getting here. Yes, some honest ones. Okay, that's good. Well, you see, like this coronavirus has, I think, it's changed the world totally. Really, we are living in a new era now, and even after this lockdown or social distancing is over, uh, I think we're going to see a whole lot more online uh, training, online courses, online workshops, people working from home. Um, so I think this is something that all of us have to get used to. Coming in online and um, you know, learning, working all online, work from home. So that's the new norm. And I guess in terms of dress also, people will, already is happening because the type of dresses people are wearing is changed significantly. Um, you know, People sitting at home are not wearing the formal dresses, so that I think you'll see it, changing also the shift in that. So we're talking about cultural change, how the culture impacts consumer behavior, um, and this particular event that we are facing right now throughout the world, it is going to change. It has changed, obviously, but it's going to change more significantly as time goes by. The culture of people, how people behave, how people interact with each other, how people do work, how people study, so on and so forth. Um, I'm just going to. Uh, yeah, I think what we'll do is we'll kick off in a second here. Get my cables and stuff all set over here. Uh, Another interesting cultural change I think I might have talked about earlier, but you see a lot of professors and a lot of trainers and a lot of people. They've set up home studios, for themselves so that they can work online, and that's something I've done also. I've got a little home studio set up. Um, and I know a lot of my other colleagues out there who are doing the same things. In fact, some of the most popular videos right now on YouTube are how to set up your own home studio, how to work from home, and things of that sort. So today we're going to be talking about social classes. I'm just going to wait for another maybe 30 seconds, uh, one minute or so, uh, to see if other people join in, because I see the numbers is going up. Okay, guys, I think we kick off. Okay, so today we're talking about social class and consumer behavior, and how social class affects people, how social class affects society, how social class affects the way we behave, and then consequently, we want to look at it from the perspective of marketing and marketers. How do marketing departments, marketing companies, marketing organizations, advertising companies, PR companies, so on and so forth. People doing marketing online, which has become quite big now on social media. How do we need to keep this in mind when we are trying to sell our products and services to our target audience? And obviously, it's not necessarily selling products and services, but this is also important when we keep in mind um, non-for-profit organizations. So again, in the midst of this whole coronavirus, pandemic, we see there's a lot of charities who become very active, who are going out and helping people who are in need. Again, this is important for not-for-profit as well as for-profit. And the third one we're seeing now is the government as well. So a lot of information is coming out from the government, especially again during this pandemic. There's constant information coming out from different government departments, from the prime minister's office, from the president's office, so on and so forth, from the health departments, and they're communicating with people. So, uh, you know, consumer behavior, understanding consumer behavior is not just important for companies that sell products and services, but it is also important for the nonprofit sector as well as government and any organization that really wants to communicate with its target audience. Today, specifically, we are looking at social class and how that impacts consumer behavior. So, social class, what is a social class? Um, Social class, if I can just make this a little bigger for you guys. Um, there we go. Um, and if I can move the video also down a bit so that it's, say, somewhere here. Right? Yeah, there we go. It is the division of members of a society into a hierarchy of distinct status classes, so that members of each class have either higher or lower status than members of other classes. Okay. Now, this particular concept, it varies from one country to another country. So, social classes aren't actually fixed throughout the world. Different countries, the social class will vary according to where you're living. It could also be a regional sort of a thing. It could be um, it could be within a country. If it's a big country, maybe social classes vary from one part of the country to another part of the country. So social classes aren't really fixed. They vary from one country, one region, one area to another area. And somehow society, people like to divide themselves in hierarchies. I personally don't think this is a good thing, but that's just the way how the world is. So um, social classes are there. Oftentimes we see those countries where you have monarchies such as the United Kingdom, so on and so forth. Usually the people who belong to the ruling class, they would constitute the highest social class, and then everybody else will fall downwards below that. Those countries that do not have monarchies, obviously, then the social classes are done in different sort of ways. Um, how are they done? Well, first of all, let's look at the social class itself. Um, it is a hierarchy, so you have levels that go up or go down. It's a form of segmentation. It provides a frame of reference for consumer behavior. Okay, so actually, social classes, this dictates the way how people behave. Different classes somehow tend to behave slightly differently. Uh, Reflects a person's relative social status. Okay, And for example, in Canada, individuals can go up or down the social class hierarchy. Again, that's quite similar for countries like the US, United Kingdom, and across many countries around the world. Oftentimes, people are able to move up or down that ladder. So you can go up the social class status and you can go down that ladder. So you're not really fixed in a particular class, oftentimes. In some countries, some cultures, that might not be the case, but mostly in the Western world, that is the way how it works. Uh, so when we look at it from the perspective of um, the society, I'm just fiddling around with my video also as we go along because some slides, the text is one place, some slides is another place, and something I'm learning on how to manage this video along with the PowerPoint presentations. Okay, so social class and social status. Status is frequently thought of as the relative ranking of a member of each social class. And how are we ranked? Oftentimes, there are three things we look at. So, wealth is one of them. Somehow, that is often a common denominator across the world. So, wherever you go, wealth is considered as an important factor for this thing. Power, how much power somebody has. So, people who are in government, for example, uh, sometimes the military, uh, you know, in certain countries, that would be considered as having power, and prestige is another thing. So again, a lot of times we see now people who are in the media who are very popular. So movie stars, musicians, so on and so forth. They have a lot of prestige uh, as compared to other people. And interestingly, we've been talking about the digital revolution and how technology is changing everything. Like this particular class, we're doing it online. Um, Technology is making a big, playing a big part in changing social class and social status. Because now what's happening is normal people can become, uh, you know, popular. They can gain prestige through social media. So you have Instagram stars, right? You have people who are very popular on YouTube. I believe there's a 7-year-old kid who last year made something like $7 million from YouTube videos. How did he do that? He's got a YouTube channel and he opens toys, and people, I presume mostly kids, who watch him open toys. And what that has done is it has given him prestige because he's got a lot of followers, but then given him a lot of wealth as well. Um, and when you have these two, then he's got that soft power in the sense he can influence people's buying behavior. So the toys that he talks about uh, in a positive sense, uh, those brands will probably sell more. So he does have a certain degree of power. So social media has made it possible for all of us, for anyone really to um, have power, to exert prestige, to gain wealth in a relatively short span of time. Um, there's something called the social comparison theory, which states that individuals compare their own possessions against those of others to determine their relative social standing. So what happens is in a society, we're always comparing ourselves to other people around us. Um, People who are closer to you, people within your circle, and then obviously sometimes because of the media, because of social media, we might be comparing ourselves to other people in a particular region, country, around the world, so on and so forth. Um, so that's how people, they divide themselves among different classes, because you're looking at yourself, say, oh, XYZ has got that type of car, I don't have this type of car. So if she's got a better car than me, then that means probably she's in a higher social status. If somebody lives in a better house than you, then maybe they have got a higher social status than you. um, so those are things that human beings generally naturally do. Okay, again, this is an interesting thing. It might not apply to all the countries all over the world. Um, in uh, I believe I was reading Norway, like it's one of the Scandinavian countries, but I think it's Norway. Definitely the thing. If anybody from Norway here online, you can tell us about it. But I know in one of these Scandinavian countries, again, I believe it's Norway. Um, People don't like to talk about their wealth. Okay, so that's the way how their society is structured, where people are not comfortable showing off or displaying the wealth that they have. However, uh, unfortunately, rest of the world, most of the countries, this is the one of the factors is people are just always comparing themselves to others, and wealth is one of the key factors that we use to compare ourselves with others. Um, so what happens is status consumption, which basically means that based on the status you have, you're likely to buy uh, certain type of things. You're likely to consume certain type of products. You're likely to need to engage in certain type of uh, activities. So that is the process by which consumers actively increase their social standing through sorry consumptions, consumption, or possessions, right? So people, what they do is generally they try to buy things, they try to get hold of certain things which will either make them fit into a certain class of society, or it will help them move up to a higher rank in society. So people often will try to buy things, buy brands, buy services which will help them either fit into the current status that they are in, or try to go up a certain status. Um, we talk about that in a short while, how that is done. So when we talk about measuring social social classes, right? Actually, it's a subjective measure. Individuals are asked to estimate their own social class position. This is usually the case, roughly. Um, in the United Kingdom, they've actually created an online um, tool which you can use, and you can fill out, and it will give you an estimate of what social class you belong to. So there's a certain set of uh, questions that you'll answer, and those questions pertain to, again, your wealth, uh, your um education level, and there's a number of other questions that people answer, and it gives them what sort of social status or social class that these people are in. There are certain reputational measures. Informants make judgment concerning the social class members of others within the community. So you might be asked to tell us, okay, about what do you think about other people in your society. Where do you think those people belong uh, in the social class? Again, it's a relative thing. So people are always comparing themselves to others, and then other people are comparing themselves uh, to each other, and that's how social class is done. In terms of an objective measure, individuals answer specific socioeconomic questions and then are categorized according to the answers. So you might be asked specific questions about, okay, how much money do you earn in a year, for example. Those specific questions are there, which will help you, to decide what sort of social class somebody belongs to. Um, I'm just gonna what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna share the link as soon as I find it, about the social classes in the United Kingdom. There's a test, uh, and what happened was basically in 2013, roughly around 2013, um, they redid the social classes. So scientists sat down and they said, well, the social classes that we are using, it is kind of old, it's kind of outdated, and we need to have a different method of looking at social classes. and they came out with a new with a new method. And under the new method, there were seven social classes which were developed. I'm going to see if I can share this with you. Again, I'm relatively new uh, at this, so um, I am not sure what is the best way to share this particular thing with you. But one of the things I will do is I'll share the link with you guys on the side and the chat, so you can have a look at this. Um, it's an article from a British newspaper called The Independent, which has categorized the social classes in the UK. And I'll see if I can share the image somehow. Um, if it comes up, okay. So if that works, that works. If it doesn't work, then we'll just move on to the next thing. Um, there we go. Got it. Okay. So this is the new characterization done in the UK. Different classes. And you're going to have a look at this in detail. Different countries, like I said, they do things differently. This is specifically for the United Kingdom. Um, and these are the classes that they have come up with. And what happens is we can move up and down these classes based on the amount of education we have, based on the amount of wealth we have, um, based on the amount of wealth we have, um, the standing we have in society, so on and so forth. So how can you move up the ladder? Well, obviously, if you are earning more money, you can move up the ladder. But at the same time, it's not just about the money. You could move up the ladder if you gain higher education. So someone who does a master's degree will move up the ladder. Somebody from a master's to does a PhD will move up to a higher segment of that. Or if you're an accountant, again, accountancy has got its own levels. If you're a lawyer, lawyers have got their own levels. In the UK, it starts at solicitor, the lower level goes up to barrister, which is the higher level of law. So it is possible to move up and down these ladders. So how can you move down the ladder? Well, for example, if you commit a crime and you commit a crime, your reputation goes down. Obviously, when your reputation goes down, you will move down that social class that you're put in at that particular point in time. Um, and we do have examples of people, because there's so many people, unfortunately, who commit crime, uh, who, you know, because of the crime they commit, if the nature of the crime is serious, if it's something horrible, yeah, they would move down the social class consequently. So I'm now just trying to figure out how to go back to my slides. Interesting thing. Okay, I think I got it. There we go. So moving on, the objective measures within social class. Uh, what happens is uh, we've got uh, something called a single variable index, which looks at occupation, education, income, and some other variables. And then there are the composite variable indices. They look at status characteristics, the socioeconomic status score, and so on and so forth. The one I just shared with you guys, that is for the UK. I'm sure if you go online, you will be able to find um, similar ones for other countries that are there. Okay. Um, in this particular chart, what they've done is they've looked at the readers of a newspaper or magazine it's a magazine in Canada, um, and they asked them questions which help them to identify, uh, you know, key characteristics, and then accordingly they came up with put them in different classes. So they've looked at things like how many people with postgraduate degrees, how many professionals are there, IT managers, specialists, and so on and so forth. Average household income, readers with household income over $125,000 or over $60,000, so on and so forth. Again, this is a particular one for Canada. So the index of status characteristics is a composite measure of social class that combines all of these things: occupation, income, uh, the source of income. In this particular case, they're not looking at the amount of income, but they're looking at source of income, the house type. Uh, so, what type of house you live in? Do you live in a flat? Do you live in a house, a bungalow, a cottage, whatever? The area that you are living in. Obviously, there are certain areas which are more considered affluent than other areas, and that happens all over the world. Wherever you are, there are certain areas which are just uh, considered as higher of having a higher social status than other areas. So all of these things are looked at, and we create a composite score. And then we're looking at the socioeconomic status score as well. The socioeconomic status score is a multi-variable social class measure used by the U.S. Bureau of Census. So that's for the American market. Uh, that combines occupational status, family income, education attainment into a single measure of social class standing. Uh, Again, like I said, different countries do things differently, but generally, as you're looking at these things, you're probably seeing, okay, what are the social statuses, social classes that are coming about in this thing. So now we look at this from a marketing perspective. Why is this important for marketers? For us to know what classes are there and how do people fit into those social classes. Actually, it is quite important. Why? Because uh, based on the class that you are in, generally speaking, you are likely to buy certain types of, for example, clothing, the certain types of fashion you're going to do. Um, which area you shop in, what brands you purchase, uh, so on and so forth. All of those factors actually dictate, uh, you know, are dictated by your social class. Um, the pursuit of leisure, the leisure activities that you do, right? So just quick question, how many of you guys play golf? Right? Now, golf is generally considered a sport which is for the upper classes, right? Why? Because, well, if you want to play golf, usually you cannot just go and walk into a golf course and say, okay, I want to play golf. Oftentimes, you have to gain membership to a particular area. Now, to gain membership is not that easy. First of all, you need to have a big chunk of money to gain membership. Number two, even if the amount of money they charge for membership is not very high, um, oftentimes these clubs require you to get recommendation from two or more people who are already members of this golf club. So that means there are other people who are members of this particular club. You have to know these people. You have to be friends with them for them to give you a reference. If they don't give you a reference, even you might have a lot of money, you will not be able to get into uh, a, a place of that nature. So that's the problem. Uh, you know, uh, People who belong to certain classes will hang out together. They will uh, they will engage in certain activities together. In this case, we're talking about leisure activities, right? So even if you want to move up the class, you feel you've got the money, you feel you've got other things. It is not often very easy to move the class. So on a you know on a statistical ranking, yes, you might fit into a higher category, but actually trying to fit into that particular thing is not that uh, uh, not that easy. Uh, I don't know if you guys. Okay, it's kind of an old movie, but they talked about the social classes in that movie. Titanic, extremely very old. Uh, but what happens in Titanic is Leonardo DiCaprio. For those of you who don't know, he's on the ship and he makes friends with the lady who's from the upper class, and she takes her for lunch or dinner or something, and she's explaining to him, where different people belong to, and then she refers to some people as new money. New money are people who, at that particular point in time, were people who made money who weren't very rich previously. So their families weren't rich, but they made a lot of money. Uh, and they were trying very hard to fit in with the existing upper class. These are the people whose families were rich, they're wealthy, they inherited a lot of money. But the funny thing was, these guys who were rich, their families were rich, they were not really accepting these people, the new money people, easily into their network, uh, into their group. So yes, on paper, uh, we can move up to social classes, uh, but in real life, it oftentimes it becomes very difficult to do that. However, from marketing perspective, yes, we have certain important factors we need to look at. Things like saving, spending, and credit. Okay, people in different classes will uh, they tend to save money differently. They tend to spend money differently. The credit or the loans uh, that you get, the credit cards and things of that sort. Again, it varies from one class to another class. Uh, when we look at the responses to marketing communication, how do different classes respond to marketing communication? So these could be advertising, these could be uh, you know your messages on social media, so on and so forth. Upper classes have a broader and more general view of the world. That's usually the case around the world. And the reason why we say some of these people are in upper class again is because they've got more wealth and a higher level of education. So they have a better view of the whole world. Uh, Regional variations obviously arise. Exposure to media varies by social class. So that they would visit would be slightly different than, say, people in the middle class. So people in the middle class, if they're traveling internationally, they will be going to very different type of locations. Uh, Whereas the people in the upper classes will be going to slightly different type of locations. Just to give you an example, um, in the Indian Ocean, we've got two island nations, Sri Lanka and Maldives. Actually, Sri Lanka and Maldives, they're part of the same island chain. Uh, However, the type of people that go to these two countries are very different. Sri Lanka is more targeted towards the middle class. Okay, so you go there, the hotels are cheaper, uh, the facilities are crowded. There's a lot of people on the beaches. Shopping is cheaper. Everything is a whole lot cheaper. Maldives, on the other hand, is much, much more expensive. Um, and the type of people who go to Maldives are usually people from the upper class. Just to give you an example, back about $10,000 a night, 10,000 US dollars a night. Whereas if you go half an hour, 1 hour further up towards the northeast, you're Sri Lanka, you can rent a cottage by the sea for as little as $50 a night. So there's a big difference. Consequently, people who belong to the upper class will tend to travel to places like the Maldives, get private yachts, charter helicopters, so on and so forth. Those who are in the middle classes will tend to go to places like Sri Lanka. So even though they are going on international holidays, the places they go for international holidays they differ uh, be, be, between the two classes or the different classes. If you have more classes that we are looking at in there. Uh, Moving on, the limitations of social class. Obviously, there are limitations. Uh, like I said earlier, personally, I don't think this is a good uh, or fair way of doing things in life or in society. But as marketers, we need to know about these things because it does impact people's behavior. It does impact the buying behavior. Uh, it impacts the consumption behavior, and so on and so forth. Social class is more difficult to measure than income. So income is quite easy. We know how much someone is earning. But in terms of the social class, that can often be difficult because a lot of the questions that people are answering, uh, they're they're answering it on their own. They're giving estimates on where they feel they belong. Many purchase behaviors are related more to income than social class. So many of the behaviors we see oftentimes will be relevant to a particular income as compared to a social class. And consumers often use expected social class for their consumption patterns. So people uh, will consume based on where they're expected to be, where there are other people think you should be, as opposed to where you are. And then obviously, dual incomes have changed consumption patterns. So we've seen dual income families where both the husband and wife are earning. Uh, that is happening literally all around the world. Wherever you see, we see many countries around the world where both the husband and wife are earning, both partners are earning, and that dual income has increased the amount of wealth that people are getting. Uh, Again, wealth income is just one small part of this social class. There are other factors to consider in there. So oftentimes people will be spending based on the income as compared to the social class that they're in. Individual dimensions of social classes are sometimes better predictors of consumer behavior. Okay, so um, just to give you an example of this, how income is different from a social class. So people who belong to, say, for example, the upper class in any country, they tend to purchase goods. The brands that they purchase are not ones that are showy or flashy. Okay, so you might be purchasing something that's very expensive. So somebody could have a suit on which costs £10,000, but the average person will not be able to tell that person's got a suit that costs £10,000. Why? Because the people who belong to the upper class, they're not spending uh, trying to show off that brand to everybody else. Whereas people who've got a lot of income, and we see this a lot, people who earn a lot of money in a short span of time, what do? They buy brands which everybody can recognize. So the logos are big, they're showy, they're flashy. For example, they'll wear a belt, uh, whether it's real or fake or whatever, you'll have this Louis Vuitton belt, and you make sure everybody can see the logo of that thing, right? Now, that is the consumption behavior of people with a lot of money, whereas people from the upper class may not go for that particular uh, behavior. So that's the difference between uh, people uh, who make a lot of spending based on their income versus people who are spending based on their class. So middle class, this is one of the most important classes of any country that we look at. The middle class of household, usually uh, an economy is doing good when the middle class is big. Okay, as the middle class becomes bigger, the spending goes up for that particular country, that particular region. So the middle 50% of household incomes are considered as the middle class. Household makeup of usually these are college educated adults in countries like the US, UK, um, Canada, Europe, and so on and so forth. They obviously are into high technology, um, and are involved in children's education. The lower middle to middle based on income, education, and occupation. This does not include the upper middle. Okay, so the middle class is actually divided into segments. You have the lower middle, the middle, and the upper middle. So three different segments within middle class. The upper middle is closer to the upper class, so they're slightly different. But the middle, which is the 50% roughly households, these are the people we're talking about. They're college educated um, adults, mostly adults into high tech or knowledge economy. These are people who have jobs that do not require manual labor. These are people who have jobs that require you to use your brain power, to use your education for uh, the work that you're doing. Why is the middle class important? Well, the middle class is important because um, a middle class, from a marketing perspective, these are the people who help your economy grow. The upper class, what happens is often they're not spending money in your country. This is something very interesting. I've seen this right across the globe. So the upper class in the United Kingdom, in the UK, they go for shopping to Europe, they go for shopping to US. Most of the time, they're not spending in the UK. The upper class in the US is coming to do shopping in London and the UK and Europe. They're not spending most of their money in the United States. The upper class in Europe is coming to the UK and to Dubai and to US for shopping. They're not spending much money in their own countries. The lower class are people who obviously from income perspective, they might not have a lot of income. Um, so oftentimes these people are earning money just to survive. So they're spending on basic things. Okay, they're just making ends meet. One paycheck to next paycheck. They don't really help the economy grow. Actually, it's the middle class that is helping the economy grow. Why? Because oftentimes the middle class is spending that money in their own country, within their own country. They're more likely to buy local brands. They're more likely to shop from local brands. They're more likely to go for holidays within their own country. Uh, they're more likely to spend on education and schooling within their own country. The upper class will send their kids to maybe other countries or uh, outside, or they have specific schools and colleges and universities that they go to. Uh, so when the middle class spends money in a particular country, what is happening is you're buying from local brands, you're buying from local stores. Local stores are employing your own people. Um, Local stores, local brands are purchasing goods and material from local suppliers. They're manufacturing it locally. So what's happening is getting the economy going. It kickstarts the economy. And if the middle class grows, your whole economy will grow. It will get better. If the middle class shrinks, then your whole economy kind of goes down. Now, I know the conservatives like to say that it's the upper class that get the economy going. That is not really the case. The upper class, they save money. They take money and they're saving the money. They're not spending most of their money. Uh, Whereas the middle class is spending a lot of money. They're out there. They're spending the money. They're purchasing mostly, predominantly from local brands and things around them, and that is how the economy grows. That is how the economy gets better. So the middle class is an important dimension for marketers. It is an important dimension for economists to look at. Um, uh, because that again helps the economy grow. Then we've got something called the working class. These are households with lower earnings. Um, they control more than 30% of the total income in the United States. Okay, these consumers tend to be more brand loyal than wealthier consumers. That's quite interesting. Uh, Again, one of the things I think I've talked about earlier, um, I'll talk about again. brand loyalty, it was uh, because there are different levels of loyalty that we have to look at. However, in this case, we look at brand loyal as they will purchase one particular brand or more frequently. As compared to the wealthy consumers might not have one particular brand, they'll have a group of brands that they are loyal to. For example, uh, somebody who's from the upper class might fly um, with Emirates Airlines, but then they might also fly with Qantas Airways because those are two brands that they're loyal to. Whereas the working class, oftentimes the loyalty is dictated by the price. So things that are cheaper. So the budget aircraft carriers, like in Europe, we've got Ryanair and EasyJet and so on and so forth. They're more likely to go for those type of things. They're more likely to shop at those supermarkets which are lower price. So it might look like they're more brand loyal, but in reality, they're repurchasing from the same stores because they're offering a lower price as compared to the competitors. In this table, we've created a social class profile. So the upper class, which is what we also call the country club establishment, usually a small number of well-established families. Okay, notice we don't say individuals. These are families. It's a group of family. They belong to best country clubs and sponsor major charity events. Okay, so there's many country clubs around the world. Um Clubs are there in different cities all around, um, and the upper class will belong to a particular. They will belong to these higher end um, country clubs. These people, they sponsor major events, charity events. So yes, everybody gives to charity. There's no doubt. A lot of people give to charity. However, these guys will be sponsoring the major charity events. Okay, so that could be the local museum, the art gallery, so things of that sort. These people serve as trustees for local universities and hospitals. So they're on the board of directors for good universities and hospitals and other charitable organizations. They could be prominent physicians or lawyers. They'd be head of major financial institutions, owner of major long established firms. Um, Again, one of the key factors here is the long established part. It's not about people who are, uh, who become CEO of a company who's relatively new. Um, and they're accustomed to wealth. So do not spend money conspicuously. Okay, sorry, I've been talking quite a lot. So you're not showing off your wealth. You're not being flashy about your wealth. Okay. Um, in comparison, you have the lower upper class. Okay. This is what in the Titanic movie that lady was telling Leonardo DiCaprio about. These are the new money, people who've got new wealth. Okay. These guys are not quite accepted by the upper crust of society. Again, the Titanic movie showed this really very well. I'm sure there are other movies and stuff out there where you have examples of these. Uh, but these guys are not really accepted by the rest of the uh, upper class because those guys have been born into wealth. They represent uh, new money people who've made money relatively recently. Okay, they're usually successful business executives. So they might have set up businesses and made a lot of money, or maybe you made a lot of money from investment, uh, or if you're working in an organization, you moved up the ladder very quickly, you've done really well, and then you've made a lot of uh, wealth. These guys, on the other hand, they like to show off their wealth. They like to show off the brands. They like to show off, those type of things that they own, the possessions, and so on and so forth. Uh, why are they doing that? Because they want to tell the world, hey, look, we have moved up the class. We are no longer in the lower class that we used to belong to. we are now the wealthy. We have lots of money there to spend on. So these guys will spend money on, if I can, my, okay, you know what, my system is kind of hung. So if you give me 1 second, if this goes offline, don't worry, I'm going to restart this bit. Um, Things of that sort do happen, and that is the interesting screenshot that's come up. Don't go anywhere. Uh, am I back? Yes, I'm back. But then I've got my older slides in there, right? Um I just need to load the new slides. I do apologize for this, guys. It's just thing. Um, Load the slides. Okay. Yes, I think we're all set. Um, if I can just swap these, there we go. So we were looking at okay. The next major group is the upper middle class, right? We talked about this just a short while ago. These are the achieving professionals. Uh, these people have neither family status nor unusual wealth. So they might not be very rich, and the status might not be there. Career-oriented people, people who are pursuing a particular career and they want to move up that career ladder. Um, Young professionals, oftentimes you see who are part of this. It could be corporate managers also that would be part of this uh, group. Again, managers who've not really made a whole lot of wealth, but yes, these guys could be small business owners. There's a lot of small business owners that would fall under this category. Most are university graduates, but uh, many with graduate degrees. That's a master's degree. So you majority of these people will have a bachelor's degree at least, but then you'll have a number of these who would have a master's degree as well. Active in your professional community, you're active in your local community, and you're active in social activities. Have a keen interest in obtaining better things in life. So you want to progress for yourself, for your, they'll work on the house, they'll try to get a better house or in a better neighborhood, um, and the type of furnishings you have, the type of things you have in your house. You want to show that as, yeah, this is uh, part of their status symbol of or showing an achievement. Consumption for these guys is also they like to show off. They have the brands, the things they want to tell people. Okay, this is what this is the type of car I'm driving. This is the type of brands I'm wearing, and so on and so forth. And these people are often very oriented. They want kids. They want to have families, and so on and so forth. Um, Something interesting. Again, that particular uh, dimension varies from one country to another, not just people in the upper middle class. But this holds true for countries like the US, Canada, UK, so on and so forth. Um, Sorry, guys, I'm just trying to. I think I need to hire somebody to work these screens for me. Okay. Then we've got the lower middle class. Okay. This is what we call the faithful followers also. These are probably non-managerial white-collar workers. Okay, they could be highly paid. It's a possibility. Um, so white-collar workers are people who get jobs based on a certain degree of education, um, and they could be highly paid workers. They want to achieve respectability and be accepted as good citizens. Want their children to be well behaved. They tend to be churchgoers or this is again something for the US Canadian, because in Europe, for example, the number of people who believe in religion is going down. There are more atheists, you know, in these. Um, you can replace the church um, um, with not-for-profit organizations, with charities for people who are atheists, who sponsor those type of activities in Europe and other parts of the world. They prefer neat and clean appearance and tend to avoid uh, faddish or highly styled clothing. So they will not go for the super styled clothing. They go for the neat appearance, and constitute a major market for do-it-yourself products. So uh, people who like to do things on their own. IKEA is, as a brand, has made a lot of money from this particular market. So what does IKEA do? IKEA sells furniture, and the furniture they sell it's a do-it-yourself. You buy a desk; it comes flat packed. You have to open it up and you have to assemble it yourself. Uh, there are other stores, hardware stores, which uh, you know sell do-it-yourself packs. How to paint your own home, how to lay tiles in the bathroom yourself, things of that sort. So these guys are primarily looking at the do-it-yourself product. That is the biggest market for the DIY uh, uh, brands out there. The upper lower class, now we're going to the bottom end of the segment. The upper lower class, they're security minded mostly. Um, Oftentimes, they're the largest social class segment, okay, in most countries. They're what we call the solid blue collar jobs. Blue collar jobs are those jobs where people often will do things, physical labor type things. They strive for security by oftentimes becoming members of unions. They view work as a means to buy enjoyment. They want, again, children to behave properly. They're high wage earners in this group, and they may spend impulsively. Okay, interested items that enhance their leisure time, TV sets, hunting equipment, and things of that sort. Uh, in groups of this nature, again, the North American, um, you know, categories, husbands have a strong macho self-image, and usually uh, the household will be dominated by the male. The men are sports fans, heavy smokers, and beer drinkers, right? Uh, so when we look at big sports leagues, right, all around the US, Canada, Europe, so in terms of football, that is both the American football as well as the normal football we play in Europe. Um, Most of the viewers, most of the people who might go attend the games in the stadium would belong to this upper lower class segment. And interestingly, in terms of the financial situation, um, so you could have people like mechanics, carpenters, plumbers, so on and so forth, constituting this blue collar um, market. Interestingly, the amount of money these people may be earning might be more than that of a lower middle class. So, for example, a school teacher might be part of the lower middle class, right? Which, in terms of classes, is ranked higher than the upper lower class. Um, but in terms of uh, money, it is possible this lower, uh, the upper end of the lower class, these guys are making more money. Okay, so in Western Europe, North America, oftentimes you can pay more money to some blue collar jobs than someone who is at the lower end of the middle class market. So teachers don't make, for example, that much money. School teachers don't make that much money. When we had the last financial crisis, 2000, that was like 2007, 8, 9, around that time. In the UK, for example, a lot of bankers who had good jobs, uh, when they were fired from their jobs, the number one profession that the bankers went into was plumbing. Why? Because you can make a lot of money from plumbing. So a school teacher, for example, might make, I'm just giving you figures from 2000. So there's a big difference in terms of the money that they're earning, but they belong to different social classes. Okay, and finally, we've got the lower class. These are the people what we call the strugglers, poorly educated, often unskilled laborers, right? Usually out of work. They could be what we call the day laborers who work from one job to another job. Uh, they unfortunately, because the way how their situation is, they might not pay attention to the kids as much as the other classes. So the children are often treated poorly, um, and it's a day-to-day existence for these guys. Um, uh, that's the basically end of the lecture for our social classes. Um, Finally, once again, I have to reiterate that these social classes, it's really, it depends. They differ from different countries, one country to another country, but generally these last 4 or 5 slides that I've gone through, um, they kind of, show us generally how classes are divided around the world. And then there's different variations to this, um, in terms of the classes, um, from one country to another country, from one region to another region. Okay, so now we'll take the questions and answers for those of you and answers. Usman has got a question. Most people live and die in social class into which they are born. If they are born poor, chances are they will die poor. How can we compare being poor 100 years ago to being poor today? Oh, it's a good question. Okay, yes. Um, Unfortunately, the way how the world is, you know, the way how the world is structured, that seems like the case in many places around the world. That you're born and die into the same class. Actually, things are changing quite dramatically. I believe I was looking at statistics, and last year in the US, um, any guesses? And people who are online now, live, you guys can put in your guesses on the chat we have here. Uh, the top 1% of the Americans, how much of the total income did they earn last year? Any guesses? So 1%, how much income did these people earn in the last year? Okay. The figure actually is something like 90 plus percent. So 1% of Americans earned more than 90% of the wealth that was created last year. That's a phenomenal amount. That is a ridiculously high amount of money. So that means the bottom 99% have